travel day for us today. We woke up around 5 o'clock. We have about a 2.5 hour drive. It's about 7 o'clock right now. We got on the road a little while ago, so we have a decent ways to still go. We wanted to show you guys the southernmost point of the Big Island today, and we're going to check out macadamia nut and honey farm. We don't really get to explore this side of the island too often just because it is so far away from where our family is and where we normally stay, but we want to show you why it's worth making the trek from the we'll call it the more touristy parts of the island.
Busky. I go by Scott. I do everything here. I'm the big Kahuna, so I make all the choices, decisions, created all the recipes of the stuff you sample at the farm stand, built the building we're in, built the aquaponics, came up with a concept. We bought the place in 2004. We were going to do it kind of as a place for the weekend to come. We were living on Oahu. We looked around on Oahu and there wasn't anything you could afford. And so we came over here kind of as a vacation, just looking at land. So many people do. And we found this place through a realtor in Naalehu and came, and it was horrible. Jungle took over. There at one point, we were able to find from records over 4,000 lime trees planted in the lower section. There was 350 avocado trees, which are mostly still there, and about 300 lemon trees. From 4,000 trees, I think we were able to recover about 1,800 of them. Since then, we made a change, decided to go with coffee instead of lime. So now we have about 50 acres of coffee. We do everything from the plant to the bag, with the exception of what's called the dry mill. Take the parchment off and come up with a green coffee that you roast. So we do use a company in Hulualoa that processes our coffee. We'll process 4,000 to 6,000 pounds at a time, and then that you lose about 80% of that. And then we store it in a climate-controlled building in Ocean View until we're ready to roast it. And then we roast it right outside here in our roasting area. I started doing products in this building. We started with honey because there was some beehives on the farm when we got here that were owned by a guy that lived in Alaska. And I got fascinated with that and how they worked and all that kind of stuff. So I asked him if I could mess with his hives. He said, sure, just don't mess them up. And that was 2004, 2005. I got into that, and to build our hive count, we started doing bee removal. And so we go and we take the bees out and we put them into hives and bring them back here and establish new hives here and learn how to do that process. And we moved hives all over the island. I'm up to about 20, 25 hives now. I actually got out of doing bees myself. I'm a little over 70, so that's a lot of work lifting beehives.
Yeah.
And I have a good friend, Ron, who started about the same time I did. So he now takes care of our bees as well as his. And that's where our honey comes from. So we also do honey here on the farm. Yeah. So when we started doing honey, we harvested honey, and it was probably the spring, and it was a really light, sweet honey. It tasted a little citrusy. And we're still going, that must be spring honey. And so our first honey was spring honey. Then in the summer, it evolved a little bit. And so we call that summer honey. And in the winter, it was kind of a caramely honey. And so we called it winter honey. And the next year was a little different. We're going, oh, well, that's weird. So we called it Paradise Blend. Kept evolving because what the honey is in any season, there is a predominance of something. When the citrus blooms, there's a lot of, well, there's still lime trees here. The neighbor has a bunch of orange trees. And so when that's in bloom, you get this preponderance of a light, sweet honey. And then in the fall and winter, you get a lot of eucalyptus and avocado because that's what's blooming then. So it's a caramely, almost like pancake syrup honey. It evolves. And summer generally is more MacNut. There's Christmas berry in there. So it all depends on what's blooming at the time. So we created other little names to try to denote the differences and variances in the honey. Bees actually keep the honey segmented in the hive. If there's a little bit of something, you'll have a little area that's that honey. When you're working the hive, you'll go, oh, look at that. And you try a little taste and, oh, that's good. And that's how we learned that coffee is something we wanted to do. Coffee honey. We thought that would be really cool since we have all this coffee. Its bloom is so short and there's so much other stuff going on that it's hard to get a definite, it's only coffee. So every once in a while we'll get little bits and we'll put those in a separate container when we can. And so, yeah, if you see those unique separate things, mango, we'll get a mango, a little bit of mango, it'll be really good. When we started processing a lot of honey, and I'm going, oh, this friend of mine has MacNuts and coffee. And so we traded him honey for coffee. We got his coffee and we had a little table out front, with just a little coffee and a little honey, and people would come visit. And that was our beginning. And then he was also processing some MacNuts. So I got to learn about how to do MacNuts. And we were actually doing them on the counter. I had a bowl, big bowl, and we'd stir up like 10 pounds at a time or 5 pounds. And then dehydrate those in little household dehydrators and process those. So we had coffee, honey, and macadamia nuts. And then we needed, macadamia nuts need to have some flavors. So I started working on different flavors and things that we could coat the nuts in and how to do it. Then we were processing maybe 100 pounds at a time. And this year we'll do somewhere close to 500,000 pounds and about 180,000 pounds of coffee. Honey, it's thousands of pounds. I don't know how many. Early on, I figured out that coffee historically had been dried on tables in the sun. And as I'm learning that from my friend, it takes anywhere from 3 to 12 weeks to dry a batch of coffee in the sun. And so I'm going, there's got to be a better way to do that rather than do it out in the sun. So I came up with a dehydrator using dehydration. And so I designed and built a bunch of giant dehydrators. Most of our dehydrators will do 500 pounds of coffee at a time. From doing it in the sun, it takes 3 to 12 weeks. In a dehydrator, it takes 3 to 5 days. And in that time, the coffee is always exactly the same. There's no chance for it to mold, mildew, get bugs in it, any of that kind of stuff. So the same thing was true of macadamia nuts. When you get them from the field and husk them, they're called wet in shell. So that means the nut has a higher moisture content. And so first thing we do is we put them in dehydrators. And we take that moisture content from about 18 to 25% down to about 12 to 15%. And then we move them into another stage or step, and we get them down to around 3%. And between there, we crack them. So we take the shell, we break it, and that gets you the nut meat, which is what we eat. And macadamia nut shell is the hardest shell on the planet. See, when you walk around the farm, you'll see it used as road surface. It doesn't deteriorate in the sun, wind, rain, and it'll be here in 50 years. We recycle everything. The husk goes back into the soil, into plants, into our gardens. We give it about a year to break down into a really nice dirt. It's like wonderful stuff. There's 5 hours you'll never get.
We're good.
I'm an entrepreneur for life. I started working when I was 10. I had a full-time job, 48 hours a week for my uncle. By the time I was 18, I had my own business. I did central air conditioning. I learned from him and started putting air conditioners in people's houses and installing them, that kind of thing. I did a little stint. In fact, it's one of the only times I've ever worked for somebody. I worked for GE for about 7 or 8 years. And then after that, I was living in Texas at the time in the oil area. And I was walking to school one day and I was going back to college. And the rain, you've heard of acid rain, was burning my eyes as I'm walking to class. And I'm going, man, I can live anywhere in the world. Why am I here? I had a friend who lived here, and so I came here to visit. And I came up with a plan and actually went back to, I was still in Texas, and I went to work offshore oil for 4 months and made enough money to move. So I got here, and I was supposed to, I had this conversation with my friend who had a trucking company that he would give me a job. And I got here and he went, oh, I really don't have a job for you. And so we're sitting around in their living room. And they said, you know what this island needs? It needs a good barbecue place. Texas barbecue, right? And I'm going, I can do barbecue. Well, the next day I rented a space, leased a space that I had to build. And I built out a barbecue restaurant. Started selling barbecue. And that was in 1978. And in 1980, I got a call in June from the state newspaper. I answer the phone and this guy goes, hi, I'm so-and-so with the Star Advertiser. And I've done a little survey on the island and I decided you have the best barbecue in Hawaii. Would you mind if we came out and took some pictures and maybe give us a recipe, do a little interview? And I said, sure, come on down. And for the 4th of July in 1980, the whole front page of the food section were pictures of our little hole-in-the-wall restaurant. And I had a recipe I'd given him. And that day, our business doubled every day for about 7 days. Sleeping on the floor.
So you just can't not be successful.
That's it. It just went crazy. We got into catering then because so many people wanted our stuff. And we catered a dinner for the governor. We had these folks come down, a couple of guys, and they were opening up a restaurant in Waikiki. And they wanted our food, and so we agreed to do the barbecue. And so we all opened in the rodeo in 82, actually closed the place in Waiwa where we were the little hole in the wall. And that was fun. So I still had this location in Waiwa where we had the barbecue place. Can't just give up a lease, you have to keep paying the rent. So I had met a friend who had a pizza restaurant. And so I called him up to see if he'd like the location. And I get this girl who was not very nice on the phone and said, oh, you got fired and I now run the place. I said, well, let me tell you what I'm talking about. And I offered the restaurant to her. Made a date and she came up, nose up in the air, shaking her head going, that's not going to work, not going to work. And we had this giant door that was a big slab of wood. And I closed the door and locked it and that said, I'm opening a pizza restaurant here. I'll show you. And so over the next 2 or 3 months, I built a pizza restaurant, created the recipes, the process, the procedure. I wanted it without me because we had the barbecue. I called Jackrabbit Pizza. The day we opened, our only competitor in town, he got restricted from the Army post. So we went crazy. Did that for a number of years. Sold the restaurant to the manager and moved to Texas. Started creating these things to sell to childcare centers, furniture bits and plaything structures and stuff. And one of the things that I developed was a thing we eventually called table toys, initially called manipulative skills play table. So the whole surface was a play space for Lego and Duplo blocks. Okay. And in the middle was a bag that held the blocks.
You invented that.
I invented that.
I've used that.
You have.
I have. This is incredible. Yeah.
I invented this table and we went to a little childcare show in Houston, maybe 100 participants, something like that. And so I had like 6 items, started at 9. By 10:30, I had to move the table out into the aisle because teachers were literally running in and they were so excited. They would drop to their knees and start playing.
Incredible.
And I went, wow, I'm not stupid. This is the thing. So then from that point, I found out that there was a toy fair in Dallas. I got a place to be at the toy fair, and I built 6 tables. And I made some mistakes. I did one in red and green, which you don't want to do. You don't want to do Christmas things. So about halfway through the show, this guy comes over. And I run a catalog for retail toy stores all over the country. We drop about 1 million catalogs a year. And even though the book is closed, we can't add any more stuff. I've got to put your thing in there. We got a contract to do that. We sold, I don't remember how many, but maybe 20 or 30. I had 6 in the world. No place to build them. So I had like 6 months delivery. You pay me now, and in 6 months you get the product. The first year we did $100,000. Second year we did $500,000. The third year had this plan that we were going to convert to a plastic table. And so I had to develop that. I had to learn the plastics business, had to design the tooling, had to get the tooling made, had to work on how to do it. Table was designed, the tooling had to be made. So I contracted with a guy in California who had the best deal and sounded great. And about 2/3 the way in, he called me one day and said, I've decided not to do this. You can't do this, because I had sold them to Toys R Us, to Children's Palace, another big chain, J.C. Penney's. We had like $3 million worth of orders. We ended up getting back the tooling from him, and I had made friends with manufacturing people at Igloo. We go over, it's the summer, so they're not doing anything. Actually, it's the end of spring. They're not doing much. And so I sit down with the senior engineers and the plant people so we can work out how to do this. And we're having this conversation. And this guy ambles in, he announces that they're going to shut down the factory right when we need to start making product. The room went silent. All these people, we were thinking about it. And so we said, well, let's think about this. And we went back to the senior engineer's office. And we're sitting there going, one of them goes, I know these 2 guys up in Kansas. They're called K-Square, Ken and Ken. I gave them a call. Nicest people you ever talked to. We talked about, the engineers knew him, I got to meet him on the phone. And he said, yeah, bring the tools up. Let's take a look at it. Maybe we can figure it out. And this would happen to be their off season. My partner at the time. And I put him in a car with a mold and drove him up to Kansas. And he met with the guys, and I'm working with them on the phone, eventually flew up. And this is now late July. And we have drop dead orders for Toys R Us, Children's Palace, all those places I mentioned, that were September. I had to create a factory. K-Square offered us some space. And we had to design how we were going to assemble them, the packaging, and to get boxes made. We were actually late for those drop dead orders, so normally they should have canceled them, but they gave us an extension, and we were a week late. And that year we did $3 million. So we had a place in Kansas where we were making the table toy. I actually invented a second thing called a lapper, which was the same unit, only it was for the back seat of the car. And I got a patent for that. Then it went from 3 million the next year, went to 6 million. And then our top year was 10 million. We had a wall. We got so many letters from people, parents, who just loved them. They'd send us letters. And my favorite was from a therapist who worked with kids. And he had a child, I'm gonna cry again, a kid who he couldn't get to. And he said, I got the table. And it was the first time I could communicate with him. He was talking about the toys, not about him. Changing people's lives. Yeah. Ended up, actually, Toys R Us did a really nasty thing. They actually stole our table. They had a guy that was one of their distributors who had it in a locked storeroom. Then he broke in the room, got the table. They sent it to China, but their sales dropped from like 5 million down to 0. They didn't buy anything. And so we had a company come to us, a bigger company, and they bought our assets and actually bought me and my ex-wife, who worked in procurement. So they moved me to New York City. So I stayed there until they fired me about 6 months later. Best thing ever happened to me. It was horrible for about 10 minutes until I got home and went, I hated it there. I moved back to Hawaii in 1997. then actually went to work for another friend of mine. And I learned the high pressure compressor business. I met Lily, and she was in marketing and advertising, and actually had was a business partner of another group. She would go interview people and have groups, focus groups, to find out what they think about things. Yep. She only did giant clients. Mm-hmm. And so after we'd been together about a year, I'm going, why are you in this with those guys? She was working all over the country. I sat down and I said, we should take your part and separate it and form its own company, and then you do that. But it went fabulous, and her business grew and still survives. She has a project that goes out in 2 weeks. At the same time, we had a property on Oahu that was a half an acre, and that property could be divided into 2 quarter-acre, 10,000 square foot lots. Went out and looked at this place and built a vacation rental. So we were renting to people, and I got a call one day from this couple that had rented a couple of times that were school teachers in New York City, and they were about to retire, and they wanted to know if they could lease it from us. They took it, been there now 12 years.
Oh, wow.
More, 15 years, yeah, long time. Then we found this place, and that was in 2004, actually 2003. We still have people that came when we had a little table out front and a tent. So many people that we get love letters. Lily loves the people. Megan became an artist. She is amazing. We call all of our people that work here family. I mean, they're Ohana, and we think of them that way.
Yeah.
Our culture is about giving and getting along and helping people. And so one more quick story that you can edit in or out. We started the business in 2010. There was a thing, the Kahuna Coffee Association does a cupping competition every year. And so in 2010 was the first year we actually sent coffee to be cupped. And so we went to the dinner, the award dinner, Lily and I went, and they're announcing the winners, and they announced just the top 10 winners out of the 50, 60, 70 people that put in coffee. And they're counting down the list, and they go 10, 9, 8, and we're like, okay, we're not in
next
this.
Year.
We thought maybe 10, And they get down to 3, and they go, and number 3 is Paradise Meadows. What? And everybody looks around and goes, who is that? And Lily leaped up and went, yay! So that was our first one. Then we went to the Nationals. The SCAA does a cupping competition also, and we put in our coffee for that, and they do 800-900 coffees from all over. The first year we were 39th and 40th in the world. We're about to expand Ocean View. We're growing so fast. This year will be a little over $1 million.
No fear of failure is our secret. You can't be afraid to fail. If you're afraid to fail, then you do nothing.
Yeah.
Ever.
I call it looking for the possibility. You know what's really easy? Is why you can't. It never occurred to me
Wow.
not to succeed. It didn't come up with a how do you stop. It came up with, now what do we do? Success is inevitable.
Yeah.
The only time you fail is when you stop.
You're incredible. It was so wonderful to meet you. Thank you so much for talking to us.
Well, thank you.
Honey tasting time.
Ooh,
That's my favorite.
it's got a lot of those.
Oh, that's
floral
really
notes
good.
you're talking about.
Basil Kahuna is supposed to
The fancy one.
have guava and mango undertones.
That's different.
It's different than any other honey I've tasted. It tastes better than any other honey I've tasted.
It's almost granular.
Well, it's
so
the cream
good.
part of it, right?
Yeah, and it comes from the hive like this. It
Wow.
naturally creams. So
Really?
this is how it is collected. We don't filter, we don't alter anything.
That's incredible.
It's incredible.
It's one of the few honeys that is natural
It just comes out
great.
that way, yeah.
And yeah, it typically by nature is more granular.
To go with a lot of cream lahua and 1 coffee.
So this is the dark tropical fruit bar. This has pineapple, mango, coconut, and chopped macadamia nuts.
This is vanilla crunch.
So good.
So we're doing the pineapple coconut shortbread.
These are baked in small batches by hand and packaged by hand the same day.
That's incredible.
Scott was saying, he said you guys didn't stop until you made your eyes roll back.
So far, these are our splendors that we're purchasing. So we just finished up at Paradise Meadows. As you guys saw, there is a ton of stuff here. This is a must visit place if you're gonna come to the Big Island. Originally, we were gonna do a vlog of our whole day today. What we're doing next and you know what we end up getting into later tonight. We might see family, we're not sure. But because we had such an amazing experience here, we think we're gonna cut this video off here. We wanna give a dedicated video to this place. The owners are so incredibly nice. As you guys saw, we interviewed one of the most amazing people that we've ever met, to be honest.
Really cool people.
And then we spent a ton of money on macadamia nuts and honey. You guys gotta drive out here. It is incredible. We can't say enough amazing things about it. And there's so many things here to do with kids and stuff like that too. So it's a great place to come with your whole family. Come down, come meet everybody. But yeah, that's it for us for this video. You will see what we're doing for the rest of the day in our next video. So bye guys.